Welcome to Black Republican, Black Democrat. I'll be your host tonight, Jamar.
And I'm your other co-host, A.K. Kamara.
Don't you like the music?
I love the music.
See, my other co-host used to kill the damn theme song. He'd speak all on top of it and try to sing on top of it like he was a Loser Vandross or something.
Loser Vandross? Well, the nice thing is that we have that lead up before we start, so people get the full effect.
Absolutely. So right now, what you should be doing is not only looking at these gray hairs in my chin, but you should also be, starting your share.
Yeah.
Liking it and sharing it, so
Yep.
we could, have multiple folks watching it, so they could hear tonight's guest, which is a great guest, and hear me jump all over you.
And also make sure to throw in your comments and your questions. We're going to try and get them on air, on screen, so we can ask our guests and even for ourselves if you have questions. And as you may notice, I am clean shaven and baby smooth.
Well, you smooth, but I don't know about baby smooth. You too damn old for that.
And for those of you that didn't notice before, I do have a cleft butt chin.
I was just about to say the same thing.
It's very pronounced. It's very
what?
Pronounced.
Oh, excuse me.
But when I got the beard, you can't really see it.
That's true. Well, you should bring your beard back.
Well, the wife has something to say about.
She went.
Every once in a while, she asks me all the time. She hates my beard. She's like, "Why don't you shave your beard?" I'm like, you know what? I've had the beard for I think a couple of months. So I switch it up every once in a while.
Yeah, because it makes you look like Grizzly Adams when you wear.
No, actually, I think it makes me look more manly.
Oh,
and kind of gives me a harder exterior. So if someone sees me, they'll be like, I don't know if I should mess with that dude. But with this baby face, people are like, oh, that's just baby face guy.
You know what? You're damn right. You better put your beard back on. You're a Republican. You got to be manly.
I got to be.
Yeah, you can't. There can be no feminine qualities about you if you're a Republican.
I mean, I just in general, I don't want to have feminine qualities. I like to have masculine qualities.
Sure, but if you're a Republican, you can't have any.
I mean, there's Republicans all over.
Oh yeah, the log cabinetsism.
Yeah, there's no log cabins.
Sure,
all types.
You never hear from them, ever.
How's your week been, man?
I can't complain, bro. I'm working, and God is good, and I woke up this morning, so you get to hear my big voice.
It's been kind of a crazy week, man.
Damn right.
I feel like every week, especially with everything going on, we got Ukraine and Russia. We've got this inflation going buck wild. Today, the Fed.
You would say that about the inflation, but you're not talking about the job numbers. No Russian oil. No Russian oil. That's what, Is
that a good thing?
It is. You damn right. Because it
have higher gas.
First of all, we're not. Uncle Joe has a plan. But when you think about how there should have been either Republican or Democrat that by now should have led us away from our dependence on foreign oil.
Oh, you mean like our former president Donald Trump was trying to do?
Oh yeah, with his buddy.
We had so much oil that we were actually becoming an exporter of oil.
What did he want to do? Store it in his house out there in the Lalagago or wherever he has in Florida?
Mar-a-Lago.
Where the hell the name of it is, where he stays out there. That's what he wanted to do. He had such his ideals were so selfish. They weren't ideals meant for the country. Give me a break. Uncle Joe said no foreign oil from those dirty bastards. Okay, we ain't having it. See, this is
even now we have to go to Venezuela. Even though we have to try and get Saudi Arabia on the line to say, hey, can you guys I don't know, maybe pump up that production?
And even though we've tapped into our own oil reserves, absolutely. You got to do what it takes to bring it home for your country. And that's what Uncle Joe's doing. I mean, you guys wouldn't do that. You guys think that that's weak and feckless. But of course, if it were Mitt Romney or the red-faced bastard, you guys would think that was so tough and manly. All I
care about is that we have actually a lower price of oil so people can actually live life better.
You and I both.
That's all I care about.
You and I both. I think oil is extremely high.
However you got to make that happen, make that happen.
No, I think oil is extremely high. I think that what he's doing now, seriously, what I can't stand, and I got to put that out, was my video, our TikTok video, was me talking about what I can't stand is the disrespect from Republicans when we're at a time of war, right? To me, that I don't like that. I don't like when Democrats do it. I don't like it, period.
Who's at war? Well, America is not at war. And I hope to God we are not at war.
Well,
we don't push ourselves into war.
We're on the brink, though.
I mean, if it's Lindsey Graham or maybe even Mitt Romney, if it's up to
Republicans, typical Republicans,
we'll be in war.
Yeah, well, but listen, Romney made a point, which is actually what I was hitting on. That's true. Give them what they need, so that we don't have to get involved. give them the artillery that they need. This morning I was listening at some of his Zelensky. I was listening at some of his speech, but then I had to get my butt to work, so I couldn't hear everything. But I think first of all, what guts of a man. I absolutely have a newfound respect for this dude as a president. The way that man is hanging in there, he's not abandoning the ship. But I think that we're lacking in giving him the supplies that they need to fight off these Russians. Because I think they're right that they caught Russia off guard by fighting back. So if we give them what they need, I think that I don't know, it's going to be long, but I think that they can try to save some of their lives. They're at 800,000 or almost 1 million people that evacuated, over 2,000 deaths now. We've got to do what we can to help them.
I think that all of this conversation about Ukraine and propaganda and things like that, listen, if America is dragged into this war, it will be at a detriment. I see no reason why America should be in this war. I think that it's another thing to say that we need to try and help the Ukrainian people in regards to giving them weapons and things like that. I'm down with that, but I think there's so many things here in America that we have to be cognizant of. And one of those things is last week, the Minneapolis Police Department had their independent report that was released, right? So we're talking about things that are hitting us at home that have an impact. And in this report, I think it was a 86-page independent report that kind of highlighted some of the failures that are actually going on that happened. I don't know if they're probably still going on. We'll hopefully never find out, because hopefully we don't have any more riots or anything like that in the near future. But it went through and it kind of broke down all of these different failures of the Minneapolis Police Department. I don't know if you had a chance to kind of...
I did some of the things. Yep.
Here is my biggest takeaway, is that leadership in Minneapolis failed. Whether that was leadership at the Minneapolis Police Department, whether that was Arredondo, or basically the leaders within the Minneapolis Police Department, or the leadership of Mayor Fry. Because what that report basically said is that there was a plan in place. So they had a written plan. So it's not like they didn't have a written plan. They just were unable to communicate what they needed to do. Now, to me, it's not surprising.
No, huh? That surprised you?
It's not surprising, because I think that has been the issue with Minneapolis. It's not that the actual officers, because they're not, they're in charge of themselves, but it's the leadership. So, there was a question that was asked. Was it, Governor Walz's fault for not sending in the National Guard, or was it Mayor Fry's fault? And do you know what that report said?
What's the report say?
It said that there was a plan in place. Mm-hmm. It's just that it was so poorly communicated that no one knew how to officially request from Minneapolis.
Look, I think that it's easy to pile on right now, and I think but admittedly, so there was some failure of leadership. But I'm not going to stick the prong way up their asses, because I think that this was something that caught them off guard, and I think that you kind of learned on the fly. So I think to suggest that that things were done purposefully, I think that they just didn't want to step on too many toes. I think that they were using caution in some aspects. But I think that you're right. There was a big failure of leadership from Walz and from the mayor, right? I think you can't straddle the fence. And I think that that's what the mayor and the governor tried to do, to appease a certain group of people, not piss off this group of people. And it did cost the city. But I also think that you got to take into consideration that people were pissed off and angry and wanted to be heard and weren't. And so sometimes riots happen, I don't agree with burning your own city, because now if you got to go out to die in a rich field, you're unwanted out there as a black or brown person, so you're going to have problems. Go out there. But guess what, though?
Did you say go out there?
They went out there and burned their things. Well, you're not wanted in those cities. I mean, drive through Richfield tonight. See how many cops get behind your black ass, right? But they went out there too. I mean, that's how you knew there was folks that weren't from Minneapolis or weren't from Minnesota, because they went into Richfield, they went to Norwood Mall, they went into Blaine and other folks, other places. So I respect the report, but also I want to reserve judgment somewhat because I think that it wasn't all the fault of everybody. When I think about how leadership has been lacking, period, over the last 3 years, I don't know where to turn. I don't know what an answer is. I mean, we reelected a lot of people, a lot of the same folks. So you're probably going to get a lot of the same things. But thank God they aren't Republicans.
Well, obviously there's a search going on right now for a new police chief for Minneapolis. We'll see how that, but I agree, when you talk about failures of leadership from the city, Mayor Fry got reelected to another term. So,
well, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, you want to elect one of those crazy women that were anti-police? I don't think so.
I'm just saying at the end of the day, I think you're right that there is aspects of like, well, what do you do with this? I don't know what you do. What it takes, I think, is going to be leadership. Now, he
ain't much, but he all we got.
He ain't much, but he's all we got. I mean, you got to work with what you got, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was another story that came out just actually, I think it was yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
I think I'll preface this. Anytime I hear about someone that ends up being killed, whether it was, a law-abiding citizen killing a burglar or a criminal, I because I am a pro-life person, I still believe that all life is precious.
It is. Not when you coming inside of my home.
So the reason I preface that is because every human being has someone that cares about them in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I just want to preface that I think the loss of life is always tragic. However,
well, thank you, Peter.
When there's a justified shooting where someone is trying to protect themselves, I think that's an important conversation to have. And me, I have a permit to carry, and I carry every single day.
You got your gun on you now?
Absolutely. All the time. Even when I'm at the crib. I have.
So if I search you, you got your gun on you now?
Yeah, always. But the story came out that a Minneapolis woman and her son were at home, and she shot and killed someone that was breaking into her property. And when the story first broke, I immediately was like, oh my God, like, please. And this is crazy times right now. I'm like, please don't let it be a white person killing a black person. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, no. Right?
And basically,
it's a black woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to say who it is. People can do their whatever, look at the story. But at the end of the day, I was then secondarily like, man, I understand what the rules are in Minnesota, right? That there's this duty to retreat. Right, you have to have justifiable reason to discharge a weapon, even in defense of yourself. But I was happy to hear that Hennepin County Attorney decided not to prosecute this woman, and I think I'll call out good things when I see good things. I think that Mike Freeman is an absolutely terrible district attorney.
That's why he's on his way out.
I think the way that he decides what cases he's going to charge and what he's not going to charge, he doesn't. I just don't like anything that he does. However, by not charging this woman, I think that was the right thing. And I hope that it sets a precedence that when someone is in defense, that they will look at all of the circumstances instead of saying, well, duty to retreat, should have ran away, whatever it might be. So, again, what do you think about it, man?
She's justified. I remember when I was on that other station, when the older white guy in rural Minnesota shot and killed the couple that were continuously breaking into his home. And the one time he caught them, he shot them both and killed them. And how he's doing time right now.
Yeah.
He shouldn't be doing time. He absolutely should not be doing time. They continuously broke into his home. I don't care he's a white man. I've been robbed. I've had my home broken into by my next door neighbor. And they came in through my kid's bedroom. That is a feeling, a violation that is indescribable, bro. To come home and find all of your merch gone. And this is hard-earned things, right? I mean, they stole everything. I'm talking about even down to undergarments they stole. If I'd have had a gun and they'd have tried it, I'd have shot their ass too.
So I would always recommend that
shoot.
That when you are faced with a situation,
shoot them.
You better think real hard about
shoot them.
The moment that you are discharging your weapon at
shoot them.
realize that
shoot him.
there's a high chance that you will be charged or at least
Shoot him.
arrested. So only time that you should ever
Shoot him.
and it's not legal advice.
Shoot him.
Only time that you should ever pull out your weapon or discharge is if you believe that your life is an imminent threat or danger of death or great bodily harm.
Listen,
and
they
follow that guideline. Always try and the best way to win a fight
is shoot him.
Is to not have to fight.
Well, shoot him.
Okay.
But listen, we got to bring on our guests. Can I say, because the last couple of shows we've been getting great feedback from. Thank you, folks, and put your comments up there tonight. Can I just say that thanks Kendall for coming on, and then the week before that, Royce. Well, I always think about who they're going against, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, they have no chance. Okay, all right, and thanks for coming on. I hope both of them come on after they have successful losses in their races. But every time I think about how Kendall can beat Ilhan, how Kendall can beat Walls, or how Royce can beat Ilhan, the mere idea that either one of them can beat their respective opponents, I think of things like this.
Man, Jenga's gonna kill that boy. Man, Jenga's gonna kill that boy.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, for me, I never count anyone out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that both Kendall and Royce have every opportunity to be able to win the hearts and minds of Minnesotans in their districts and win. And I think that Walls, Ilhan, any Democrat right now that is running better be very aware that there is a backlash coming that is going to sweep so many Democrats out of office because of the failures of what you said, Uncle Joe, sleepy Grandpa Joe.
The mere idea of Qualls, and Royce beating their respective opponents, I think of this.
Man, Jenga's gonna kill that boy.
Man, tonight's guest we have running for Hennepin County Sheriff. Welcome back to the show, Jai Hanson. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
What
Welcome
up, Jai?
And happy early St. Patrick's Day to both of you.
This
guys.
is true.
I am a quarter Irish.
Are you?
I am.
So you're gonna get green and drunk tomorrow?
Nah,
Was it
I
was it
fully
day
expect
after?
both of you
No, tomorrow.
guys. Yeah.
Well, see, no, I'll have a couple
Luck
shots.
of the Irish.
Well,
Jamar?
Sammy Davis was Jewish, so I can be a little Irish. You don't think?
Get out there like a little Irish leprechaun.
Why not?
Do you have any traditions that your family celebrated?
No, that was a holiday that we didn't really partake in, but
Not too many black folks partake in St. Patrick's Day.
There are multi-ethnic, multi-racial families.
And, if you need a day to drink, you use Sundays.
I'm not against it.
Yeah.
No, I like how Chicago paints. What's that river that they paint green? What's the river in Chicago?
Oh, the one through downtown.
Yeah, I like. Now that's kind of cool.
How would I know what the name of the river is?
Don't
in
you watch
Chicago?
the? You got to watch the TV on. Oh, this man here. Do you do anything? Do you watch any TV?
Of course I watch TV. I just don't care.
How dare you talk about the goal like that, Jai? Man, let's talk about the meat that's on the meat that's on the bone.
Absolutely.
When you were here last time, I don't know how I neglected to talk about a lot of these things. Your race is really ripe for the picking. I could be sitting across and I from the next Hennepin County Sheriff. That's a big responsibility, right? I don't know if enough responsibility or onus has been put on the current guy for what he did. We now he's not even in the news anymore, right? He's decided not to seek re-election. Good. I mean, what else choice would he have, really? But this is not a guy that has taken responsibility for quite what he's done. There's still things being hidden, right, and coming out in picture and whatnot. So now that's a tainted position. How do we regain trust in the sheriff?
Well, Jamar, I think first of all, when we're talking about the sheriff's office, right, when we're talking about the current sheriff and what he's doing, I think he just continued what the sheriff's office is in charge of. And what they're in charge of is water safety, the courts, and the jail. Now, when we're talking about what the sheriff's office can do, and we touched on this a little bit last time when I was on, we got to talk about vision. And you have the leadership right now there that just continues with what they have been doing. But now it's a time for vision and how we're going to get there. And I think that's what I want to do. I know that's what I want to do, is talk more about the vision of the office. When we're in the biggest crime wave of the history of our state, when we have education gaps, when we have racial disparities, when we have, assaults, all of these things going on in our county, this is why I want to run. And this is the vision I have of being out front and talking to these people and being in the community. We touched on, I would move my office. I would have a satellite office on the north side.
Why you that's big, and sorry to interrupt, but I always do. Why is that important to you though? Having a field office in North Minneapolis, why is that important?
I think the north side has been abandoned, right? I think the north side has been abandoned not only by other people in this community, but the politicians, and with that, law enforcement, and specifically the supervision of the Minneapolis Police Department, the legacy of the Minneapolis Police Department, the culture of the Minneapolis Police Department. And I think if we really want to focus on how we're going to help our communities, how we're going to help Hennepin County, we need to put a focus emphasis on Minneapolis and the north side. Yeah. And some people come to me and say, you're talking too much about Minneapolis. Well, the fact is, if we can put a mark on Minneapolis as far as we're going to really focus on this area, it's going to only help our whole community and our whole county.
Isn't there folks do say that too much emphasis is put on saving Minneapolis? Well, right now that's where a lot of the crime is happening. Let's just keep it real. But is that isn't the job of the sheriff to police things like that, right? I mean, that's the job of Minneapolis. So are you going above and beyond your job? Are you stepping on toes, or are you going to recreate the role of sheriff?
That is the history of the sheriff's office of handling the things that they need to handle by state statute. We can't just stay in our lane anymore. And I talked about this before. We're not going to go in and we're not going to, kick in doors, and we're not going to tell Minneapolis police we're taking over. I have no intention of taking over 911 calls for Minneapolis. That's not my goal. But I do want to help with the kids getting killed. I do want to help with the people hurting. I want to help with healing the community. I mean, we went through a lot in 2020, and you can put blame wherever you want to on that, but the fact is, how do we get out of that? And if I took office, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected, and I say we're going to just keep on doing the same thing that we've always been doing, we're not going to get anything accomplished. There's a difference between vision and rank, right? And we talk about leaders in law enforcement by their rank. And where has that got us? Nowhere.
Where we're at right now?
And leadership is not by rank, and that's my point. The leadership is by choice and vision, and that's what I want to focus on.
When you talk about that, I think it comes back into what I was talking about earlier. This report comes out, says all these things about failure of leadership. Now, to me, I always will place responsibility where I think it is due. At the individual level, there is a certain aspect, but when we're talking about a law enforcement community, individual officers can make individual decisions that they need to be held accountable. But to me, a lot of this comes from the top, from leadership. I want to kind of throw this kind of two-part. We do have one of our viewers is asking, does the sheriff have the authority to make their county a Second Amendment sanctuary county? And I think that can go towards that question of what leadership can do. So for you, are there going to be things that you would want to see change from, that the authority of the sheriff has, or does the Hennepin County Sheriff not have the authority to make, Second Amendment sanctuary.
Well, to answer Rachel's question, first of all, I am a pro Second Amendment candidate, and I don't know if the other ones are pro Second Amendment or not, but I'll tell you why I am. When you have a response time for a critical incident that's 16-minute response time on average for Minneapolis, your government has failed you, and you need to be able to.
What's average? What should be the correct response time? How many minutes?
A critical emergency.
Critical call. Yes.
It needs to be under 5 minutes.
Okay.
So when you say that, I think again this leads into this question of leadership, being able to take a stance on different aspects. So for you, how do you see that leadership? Like, why is leadership important to you? And secondly, how much can you change as the sheriff in regards to the leadership structure?
We need to take a look at what leadership is and define leadership differently. Again, we're talking about rank. People talk about rank in law enforcement. What's your rank and how did you get there? But Minneapolis PD is a prime example of this. After action report confirms that there are a lot of people in high-ranking positions that should not have been there. So there are a lot of positions that of people being promoted with the Minneapolis Police Department that did not deserve that promotion. And that's the buddy system. And we need to get away from the buddy system. And when it comes to the sheriff's office, as a sheriff, you should not be focusing your day-to-day operations on what's going on internally. What you need to be focusing on is getting out in the community, talking about your vision, talking to citizens about what is concerning to them, how you can help them, and relaying that back to your agency in discussions about how we're going to implement those changes and how we're going to help the communities.
One of the things that we talked about, just you and I offline, because every once in a while, those of you that don't know, Jai and I talk more often than people know. One of the things that I wanted to ask you.
Jamar won't answer my phone call, so I've tried.
I don't talk to the police. I don't talk to the police, no.
We've had conversations before about systemic racism. Now, I am a person that believes, much like our guest last week, Kendall Qualls, that since the Jim Crow era ended, that systemic racism.
Don't forget we elected a black guy too.
Is no longer a functional aspect. But I was curious what your thoughts are in regards to systemic racism in policing, because being a sheriff is a pretty important aspect. And again, when it comes to leadership, your feelings or thoughts on certain things are going to direct.
Thanks for stealing my question. That's a great question.
Thank you.
We need to acknowledge a history of unfairness in our criminal justice system when it comes to people of color. I mean, if you can't acknowledge that, we have an issue. Whether that's our sentencing guidelines, our laws. Wait. I'll get there.
Look in the camera though. I hope Kendall is watching so you could just.
We need to acknowledge it, and I think Kendall said that.
He did not.
I think he said
he did not.
I don't want to put words in his
He did not.
mouth,
He did not.
But
you make a great campaign manager for him.
but what I would say is we need to acknowledge it. But when it comes to law,
but in the acknowledgement, are you saying so flat out though? In your mind, in your opinion, does it still exist? Does it exist in the sheriff department or the Minneapolis Police Department? Does systematic racism exist?
Does racism exist in society as a whole?
Okay, both questions. That's two-pronged then. Does it exist in society and specifically in police departments?
It exists in society, therefore it will exist in the criminal justice system.
Okay, word.
And with that, I would say law enforcement, I mean, we have trainings routinely on implicit bias and other trainings to make us aware of that and how we can acknowledge it and make sure it doesn't interfere with how we do our day-to-day business.
So here's to follow that up. I hear what you're saying, right? You're saying that because racism exists on an individual level, which I 100% agree with, that means that actors within a system will use racist aspect. So maybe there's a definition issue. Okay, here's my definition.
That's cute
issue.
the way you said that.
Okay, it's not that I don't believe that there's racist people within the system. To me, systemic racism means that the system itself that we're talking about, whether it's a bank or a specific police department, that there are parts of that system that have racism baked into them.
Yes.
And so for me, I can't see that that's true.
Well, let's trade glasses. You wearing those rose-colored ones?
I would get paid every time. And this is the thing in the litigious society that we live in. Okay, all these lawsuits that happen, Minneapolis police have paid out how many tens of millions, if not hundreds of? It's an absurd number.
Not specifically for discrimination cases.
But that's what I'm saying. If they've paid out for all these other things, then if they're paying out for these things, then that's what my issue is. So
there is racism in our society.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think what people fail to talk about when it comes to systemic racism or criminal justice system is police officers enforce the law. They enforce it. Now, if you have if you think a law that's on the books is racist, a police officer didn't write that law.
Right.
So we have to talk about the judicial system.
Mm-hmm.
We have to talk about the folks in St. Paul and what laws are on the book.
Correct.
So I think that is more of an issue to me that we need to address. How
do you rid yourself? You're a sheriff right now. You get elected sheriff. You get lots of complaints about Officer Nelson. And how do you go about firing this guy? I mean, he has most sheriffs. I don't think since I've lived here, I've ever heard a sheriff kill anyone that I can. Do you know of?
No.
Oh, right. So let's say Officer Nelson does kill someone, helping out Minneapolis police. But in the mix of that, you've had many complaints on him, and I'm not talking about because we learned too from the chief of St. Paul that complaints, depending on what complaints they are, right? But let's say you get some egregious complaints about me being overzealous in my arresting and being physical, whatnot. How do you go about firing this guy? Do you fire me, and how do you go about that? Or an investigation? What's
number one? Due process.
Okay.
Right. I think we need to focus that regardless of if you're an officer or clerical or anybody else, you're entitled due process.
Right. Word.
And if I have Officer Jamar who's out there beating people up, and there's a history of it, it will be addressed. If I'm sheriff, it will be addressed. This is the time to do that. I was vocal after George Floyd's death, and you know my stance on that.
Yeah.
And it's one of those that we're not wanting to keep bad officers in this profession. I mean, nobody dislikes a bad officer more than a good cop, right?
So you saying that, I think, has an aspect to it where you're going to ask the question. You had these feelings, you got some hot water for the comments that you said after George Floyd, right after his murder, and so because of that has an impact on everything else. So one of our commenters asked, "Do you believe that we need more training for current officers, or do we need to hire new ones?" So when you talk about culture shift, when you talk about being able to address some of these issues with officers, to you in your mind, is it the training that needs to be refined or changed, or are there some officers that you just need to get rid of them? I know it's hard to get rid of cops, but how do you feel about that in your role as a sheriff?
All of the above.
Yeah.
We need to keep. It's not about getting rid of cops and hiring new cops.
But shouldn't it though?
We need to support the cops that we have on departments right now.
Right.
That are good cops.
Absolutely.
We need a champion for them, because the fact is, if we don't champion for the good cops right now, we're not going to be able to hire good cops in the future, because the people that we're going to be getting are going to be the lower portion of people we want, candidates we want. So, number one, I think we need to have leadership in place that support the good cops.
I agree.
And And if we have that, and we have clear guidelines of if you violate something, you are going to be asked to leave. You're going to be walked out the door. However, we need to highlight the certain things that officers are doing. The fact of the matter is right now, Minneapolis PD on the north side, 4th precinct, they have
87.
Well, that's with
Uniform
That's
cops.
with field training officers. Without the field training, people on field training, it's 264 for the whole city. But on the north side, from a 4:30 p.m. to a 2 a.m. shift, in the busiest part of our state, you have 4 to 6 officers on
4 to 6 for an entire area?
for the 4th precinct.
4th precinct.
Ridiculous.
So how can we have reform if we don't have any cops?
But isn't so? No, you're right, and that's why back in November, again, I was a part of the crowd that didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Right? I believe in reform because I don't think it's ever been tried by. I mean, Arredondo. I don't. So I think Arredondo did try to usher in some good things, right? But first of all, I think, and you're gonna experience the same thing. You're gonna get the union's gonna push you, right? So is it the same? First of all, is it the same union? Is sheriffs and the police unions at the same?
It's a different union.
Different unions.
Yep.
So we don't know how big mouth that union president has, or he or she. But isn't the union going to push you when you decide to implement different changes? And what do you do?
You know, Jamar, I don't think we're far off on this and I don't have glasses on, so you can't change them out. But
Put it back on.
I don't think we're far off. I think everybody at the table understands something needs to be done differently. And you know, we're talking about hiring new officers or keeping the ones we have. I've talked about some of my ideas, cop houses that I would want to implement, so we can start recruiting young and get them engaged in this profession and also learning the community. Another thing with that is if we start supporting our law enforcement, hopefully we can stop the bleeding of them leaving daily. I mean, they're out. I mean, I have so many people, my friends, that are leaving this profession. And what I'm trying to get across to people is we are going to be in an even bigger crisis if we can't figure this out. We need the police. We all agree on that. We need the police. It's how we envision policing, and that comes to our leadership and our vision. And my vision is I don't want to go back to the days of, you know, harassing people, but I do want to stop the crime and the victims of the crime that we have in our communities.
You know, one of the things that we talked about with a previous guest that is running for Hennepin County Attorney is kind of, there's, I think, this potentially adversarial relationship between law enforcement and some county attorneys and district attorneys that are running for office. Now, specifically, this guest said that her goal was to basically get rid of warrior culture. Now, as someone that's been in law enforcement for a long time that wants to be a sheriff, how do you deal with that type of relationship if there's a county attorney that will not prosecute? Your officer arrests someone, they bring them down to the station, they book them, and within 6 hours, county attorney or deputy county attorney or, you know, someone releases them because they say, I told you we're not doing this. I'm just wondering, like, how do you deal with that type of relationship? I'm just curious.
I would be very vocal about that. And the reason I would be very vocal, I'm not trying to have an adversary relationship, but here's why I'm vocal is because at the end of the day, that hurts you and that hurts you. And that hurts the whole community by having these people out there continuously doing crimes. And it also hurts the morale of law enforcement that they're out there trying to be proactive and they're getting some of these people off the street just to have them back out in a day or two. So that would be something, again, as the sheriff, you're not handling the day-to-day operations of the agency, but I would be very vocal and try to have a good relationship with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. However, if they're letting people go, if they're letting, we're talking about third party bail and all this other stuff, I would be out there saying I absolutely disagree with it, and we need to hold people accountable. You can hold people accountable and also acknowledge that there is a history that has been unfair to people of color.
No doubt.
Okay.
When I look at how the current sheriff went through his incident, to me, it reeks of privilege. And I'm not saying white, but privilege of holding that position. Because the average Joe, that doesn't happen to. My brother that was arrested for DWI, he didn't get out the same day. He got arrested. He had his car taken away from him. All right. I'm sure if he owned the gun, he would have had his license taken away from him. I mean, this guy got some real special privilege, right? That office has lost. We've lost faith in that. A guy that can drink and drive, almost kill himself or almost maybe someone else, and nothing happens to him. I mean, how do we get the respectability back? Now, first of all, did he get? I don't know if you want to answer, but do you think he got away with without anything significant happen? Or because don't you know other folks that have experienced DUIs and had more severe punishment than what happened to him?
Was it unusual? Yes. I mean, have I heard that before? No.
Right. Okay. What was weird about it?
Well, what I'll say, have I heard that deal that he got? No. I mean, it was a very unusual circumstances, but again, due process. He hired an attorney and he got the best deal that he could get. And
damn due process. No.
I'll say this about the current sheriff. I think that
till I get arrested, right?
Right. And then you're like, I love due process.
I'm going to say this about the current sheriff. I mean, his issues have been publicized. We all know what they are.
Well, maybe.
Well, I mean, it's been publicized, and I don't want to hammer him for that.
No. I like him personally. He's a good dude.
And I think he's not running, and I hope that he does well. I want him to succeed. Not in this position, but I didn't run against him because of his crash.
Sure, of course.
I was in this race before his crash, and I ran against him because we just have fundamental differences on how we would operate the sheriff's office.
One of the things that I keep on hearing through this conversation, and it's, I think, hard for people to be able to digest, there isn't any quick fix to anything. It's not about we need to just hire a bunch of new officers. We need to just train a bunch of officers. I keep on hearing this common theme that it has to be about leadership change, that you have to be able to do all of these different things at once. Because when if you're successful in this race, which I hope you are, because I think that you would be an amazing sheriff, you're going to have a lot of work to do, not only to restore trust in the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department office, or whatever they call it. I don't know what they call a department or an office. But you're also going to have to deal with, like you said, all these officers that are leaving, and there's going to be constraints. So, I mean, is that really what the answer truly is? Is it's not about just doing the training and doing this. It truly is just about leadership.
Yeah, this didn't happen overnight, and it is about leadership. And again, this is where, I think historically we focused on rank. What's the person's rank? But we didn't really look at how did they get that rank. And for me, I'm very proud of my record. I'm very proud of I'm the only person in this race that has the most patrol experience. Patrol is the backbone of any department or any office. And for me, having that interaction with the community, I'm passionate about. And,
does that make a difference?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, because I've never put in for a supervisor position because I am passionate about the interactions that I have with the community. I prepared myself in other ways. I got a master's with public safety administration. I wanted to figure out how we could help the community. And to me, you don't need rank to help the community. You need the passion, and you lead by choice. And for me, that's what I'm doing. After George Floyd, after the civil unrest, after seeing what has happened to our county and continuously happening to our county, it's time to have that vision of going out there and really focusing on the pain, the suffering of our county, and getting out there and handling it. And the fact is, there's pain and suffering on the law enforcement side, and there's pain and suffering on the community side.
So it's important to you, as what I'm hearing, that you do some repair work. There's some repair work to do, then that you bridge that gap that exists between the community and law enforcement. We don't have that many problems with the sheriff department because you don't get scared of them till you see him on the freeway or in court and he walks up with that ugly suit he has on. Can you change the color of that outfit? Can you do that for me?
Well, sure, we can go to velour jumpsuit if you want to do that. But I'll say this: you grew up in Minneapolis.
Yes. Yep.
You know the legacy in the history of when a Minneapolis police officer comes up to you.
Yeah.
I've told you this before.
I'm scared.
You have a story yourself about being assaulted by Minneapolis police. That has to do to the supervision and administration, because a culture of any agency, whether it's law enforcement or a Fortune 500 company, a culture is set by the leaders of that agency. And there has been a long history, and it hasn't been changed. And there's a reason why I never applied to Minneapolis Police Department.
I was going to ask you that. Why didn't? Did you have the opportunity, or why didn't you?
Well, I had the education for it, right? But I didn't apply there because I didn't have a good relationship with MPD. I mean, I've been followed down alleys. I've been, we have that. But that's not something that I want to focus my campaign on. We have those stories, and I think anybody that grew up in the city has those stories. But I've worked with far more great cops in this state than bad ones, and we need to help those cops, or else we're going to lose them all.
So in a case like that, right, like in these instances where people do have, we'll call it negative interactions with law enforcement, this question we talked about before with another guest, are you able to, I guess, truly affect that from a leadership standpoint? And I'll preface it this way. Jamar once said that if someone's racist, like they're truly, like they believe that they're racist, superior, or whatever, can you change that person's heart or mind? Now, in this case, if you're having leadership that is basically like looking the other way or saying, go round people up, are you suggesting then that the officer in most of these cases are good officers just with poor leadership? Is that what you're suggesting? Or, how do you get rid of the cop that's following you down the alley just for no reason?
Fire his ass.
Training.
Yeah.
Right. What is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Be very clear about that, and a leader sets that tone, right? If we're gonna allow this or not allow it. This after action report said there were a lot of officers that rose to the occasion of helping the community without any guidance from their administration, from their supervisors, from any of the leaders at the Minneapolis Police Department. But they had that passion of helping, and they tried everything they could without any guidance. So I think, I really don't think we're far off. I haven't had Jamar yell at me yet, and either show.
That's because there was something in this cup.
I put a bunch of melatonin. And
that is why you ain't lying.
Calm you down, dog.
I thought it was mellow weed or something. So over here.
But I'll say, what we have to do is we have to get out there. We need to listen. We can't keep continuously going to our corners and saying no comment. Those days are done. Those days are done for me too. I mean, I just.
So you're big in responsibility. You're gonna be extremely responsible. You're gonna stand in front of the city, the state, the county, and assume responsibility if something goes on.
Responsibility and responsiveness.
If something goes on with one of your officers. I mean, again, the sheriffs don't really have problems, so that's the good thing. You're walking into a position where you don't have many complaints on your officers, so that's a good thing. But you're saying the buck stops with you.
We can build it from the ground up. We have a sheriff's office that we can come in and we can assist cities like Minneapolis, not take over and not taking 911 calls, but we can assist them with anything they need that we can help them with. That's number one. Number two, with the buck stops with me kind of thing. There are things that I don't know, right? I mean, that's just flat out that if I get elected, I'll be in there, and there are certain things I won't know. And that's why it's important that I put people in positions that do know how to operate those parts of the sheriff's office, the day-to-day operations of the sheriff's office, so I can be out and doing other things, talking at the legislator or with legislators or talking with community members. We need to be able to do that kind of stuff as a sheriff. So that's important to me. That's what I have the passion for, putting people in positions that can handle certain day-to-day things and not just hiring my friends. That's not going to happen anymore.
No cronyism, huh?
We're not going to do the buddy system like, again, we're talking about rank of Minneapolis PD. I mean,
well, do you have to be an officer? In I guess not every position, but the more prominent positions, do you have to be an officer to be
my command
hired?
Step? Yeah, you have to be sworn.
Okay.
Yeah, post certified.
And what is when you say that you post certified?
So you talked a little bit about the unions, and it's important to remember to be an officer in the state of Minnesota. It's a state license,
right?
So we have a little over 10,000 officers in the state, 10,500 or something like that in the state. That's a state license. That's no different than having doctors having. I think there's 9,000 doctors or something. They have a state license. Lawyers, there's 20-something thousand lawyers in our state. They have a state license. So it's the state license that you have to be a police officer. And I think one of those things, when you talk about unions, we need to have a disciplinary role on the state level in deciding if somebody should keep their license, have their license suspended, or no action taken on a license in certain situations.
Because what Sheriff did should have warned. I don't know. Am I right or wrong? Should not have warned his license being taken. In other circumstances, for AK and Jamar, wouldn't our state license have been taken from us? If there were any other cop, not the sheriff, but if there were an average cop, honestly, don't you think that his state license would have been taken from, or is that hard to do?
If you're driving in, let's say I have a squad car and I'm driving a squad car and I crash it and I'm intoxicated, I would be fired.
You would be fired? Mm-hmm. No. I mean the novelty of that, right? I mean, but and I say that flippantly because it didn't happen to him, right? And I hate to be a hypocrite because, again, I like the guy. We're not besties, but I like the guy. But I am pissed off that his due process wasn't like my due process. It wasn't like my brother's due process. And again, I said that's reek of privilege, that not white, but privileged of being the sheriff, of holding a position, of having friends as well at some high places. My granddad always said, it ain't what you know, it's who you know.
One thing that I wanted to this is cop talk.
Yeah.
We asked the last guest we had that was law enforcement affiliated, Brian Peters from the MPPOA. asked him about his thoughts on no-knock raids. So as sheriff, and you don't even have to tell as a sheriff, but just as an officer, I say, and this might be radical, getting rid of no-knock orders, no-knock raids, I'm in favor of. And the reason I'm in favor of them very, very succinctly, I believe that the loss of life that can occur, even if it's only 1 out of every 100 or 1 out of every 1,000, I think that there's a different way that you can do versus just, going into a place without knocking. What's your thought on the use of no-knock raids?
Short answer is I am against banning no-knocks. Okay. Now, diving in that a little bit further, I am for aggressively limiting no-knocks, aggressively doing it, but I don't want to close the door on it.
Why not close the door on them? I mean, I know there's some needed. You're saying, and if you got
there's some
Pablo, whatever his name is, Escobar, and other guys like that.
We don't even need to use extreme cases like that.
Oh, really?
I think we do need them, and I think what we need to do is we need to look at how they were approved.
Okay.
When Minneapolis police are using no-knock warrants for a stolen puppy,
that's BS.
That's something that, again, we're talking about leadership.
Right. Yeah.
And when you're a Minneapolis supervisor that gets promoted because your buddies, and you get promoted, it you don't warrant the rank. Okay? And we're not going to be doing no knocks on things like that. So we need to look at how agencies are using the no-knocks and how they're getting signed and who's signing off, and if we need to have a different method of signing off on those.
So, damn, time an hour goes quick. So, like, one question on the no-knock. So, if you were chief or if you're a sheriff, and has there been does a sheriff do they don't do raids? Are they ever?
Oh, yeah.
They do.
They have the. They definitely have units that go out and do raids.
No kidding. Mm-hmm. So if the same thing happens to your guy, one of the sheriffs kill someone with a no-knock, just like in the Amir Locke case, where I know nothing has happened yet, but what do you do now? Because the onus now is on the chief, the interim, and maybe the incoming. But now, if it happens to one of your guys, what do you do? I know you're saying I'll stand up and say this ain't right, but what do you do?
Well, either I'm signing off on the no-knock or I'm not.
You take responsibility for that?
I would.
You would.
So, that would be something.
But would you justify? Do you think that officer was justified in what he did?
You have to wait till the evidence comes out, right?
So two things. I think number one, that would be something that needs to pass the desk of the sheriff.
Okay.
And if we're going to be doing a no-knock warrant, the sheriff needs to know about it.
Do you sign off on those? I know a judge does, but does the sheriff sign off as well?
Yeah, that would be something where the sheriff or chief or their designee would have to sign off or could sign off on it. That's not something where I would want done, and I have no idea that it's being done. That would be a very long discussion about if it's needed or not.
And most raids that are done in the sheriff's department are approved by the sheriff, or does that still go through the judge? All warrants have to have a judge approve, right?
If it's a no-knock, there would be a judge signing off on it.
So, other raids, do they have to have a judge approval as well too, right?
I think it depends on the raid.
Okay.
Right? And what kind of raid they're doing, and if it warrants having a judge sign off on it or not. But that would be something that me as a sheriff, I would want to see pass my desk.
November will be here pretty quick. And how do you, in the few minutes we got, how do you differentiate yourself from the others that are running? I mean, I know that you've got most patrol experience. That's important. But what else is different? Why should we elect you? I vote for you. He doesn't. I don't even know why he's talking to you. He doesn't get a chance to vote for you. I do.
I don't live in Hennepin County.
Well,
don't worry. I'll get some ballot harvesting going on.
Okay. Okay. Typical Republican.
This is the time that we can really implement change. And you talked about it at the beginning of the show about, electing the same kind of people because they're the lesser of the two evils. Well, this is one where you can elect somebody that actually has a vision. You can go to my website, Jai for Sheriff, JAI, the number 4 Sheriff, to see some of my priorities that I want to do. And I'm very proud of my patrol experience and what I've done in my career. I know we can talk a little bit about transparency. I saw somebody ask me about a complaint that I had in 2018. I'll be very clear about this. In my record, I have 1 verbal reprimand, which is one of the lowest forms of reprimands. I've never had a use of force complaint. I've never been suspended, and I've never been fired. Some of the other candidates can't say the same about that.
There's a question up right now, Jai, that's asking about how can we gain trust in Hanson when he hasn't took accountability for the April 2018.
I just answered that.
You got a verbal reprimand.
I got a verbal reprimand, and I think some of the things that are out there about that are just inaccurate.
Okay, we got a few
Fake
minutes.
news? Surprising.
Please don't
Fake
start
news.
that. Do not start that term again. Really quick, what's he talking about? What happened?
So with the 2018 situation, there's things out there that there's a group home death that I was called to. Mm-hmm. The group home employee, when I was on the way to the group home, I called him.
And you could talk about this, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Look, we're talking about transparency.
Okay.
Let's be
Okay.
transparent
I just, didn't want to make you lose your job or nothing.
In 15 years, this is what I have on my record.
Okay.
And responding to the call, group home employee asked me if he could give me the information on the missing person over the phone because he needed to go check on another group home. Mm-hmm. I asked him if this person went to any areas close to the group home that I could check on before going to the house, and he goes, "Yep." So I went to a strip mall to check for this person's vehicle, and group home employee said he had checked the person's bedroom, house, and his car wasn't there, and he hasn't been there for a day. So I took the report over the phone and went back, stayed past my shift, stayed an hour past my shift, didn't put in for overtime, just stayed past my shift to complete the report, and ended up the missing person actually had killed himself, and he was laying in his bed at the group home. And it was a sad situation, and it's one that it's a call that I look back on quite a bit and think about. I wish I would have handled it a lot different.
You got rolled up for it?
I got a verbal discipline for it. The fact is, that guy had been dead for over 12 hours before we even got called on it.
Okay.
So nobody ever checked the room from the group home. So I got a verbal write-up for it.
What's a verbal write-up?
Just a verbal reprimand, I should say.
That's just a
like
way.
saying the
Just
word-
wave
So
it.
it's one of the lowest forms of
Discipline. Okay.
and it's
But specifically, why though? Because you didn't search the room for the deceased, or what?
correct.
Okay.
For the
So
now deceased or whatever.
So, I took it where I trusted the group home employee in trying to help the group home employee out by taking the report over the phone.
Is that not protocol? You weren't supposed to do that.
I should have responded to the group home.
You should have went out,
I should've
straight
went
out
out.
there. But you took. That's what I'm trying to understand. Instead of going straight out of there, you took the phone. You took the report over the phone.
Yep.
Okay.
I took the report over the phone, which he asked that I do
Okay.
because he needed to go check on another group home.
I see.
And so, in hindsight, you should have said no to him. You should have.
I should have said no to him, and you need to wait there and not check the other group home, and I need to go there. So
Was he a suspect?
No, he wasn't a suspect. He was an employee of the group.
I'm
home.
asking.
Are you
No,
not
it's-
listening
it's
to
a-
this story now?
It's a fair question, but here's the thing. This is more of a political attack.
Sure.
Because again, in 15 years, this is what I have on my record: one verbal reprimand, and as much as I work with the community, no use of force, never been suspended, never been fired.
I think that's probably the biggest thing. And hearing you want to be able to talk about this, to me, I think it's I know that you don't have any political affiliation that you're seeking, right? You're not trying to be endorsed by this or this. But I think in politics, the biggest mistake that people make is when they try to withhold information or they won't be open and honest. And I think you being open and honest is the most real thing that anybody can do. If you have something and it's like, yeah, here's this thing that happened, just be honest about it and be like, this is what it is. People respect that. Then instead of trying to like run away from it, and be like, oh, this is whatever it might be.
Yeah, I'm not trying to run away from it. It happened. I learned from it, and it was one of those things that I should have told the reporting party that I'm going to go to the group home.
Yeah,
and instead of doing it over the phone, but I thought as a paid employee, he did his part. He did his job. So
yeah.
It's something that's on my record, and I'm not trying to hide it. Transparency. Hey, I'll start with me.
It happens, and I like that. You're supposed to be, the buck stops here.
Yeah, no, that's how it has to be. Tell us again where people can find you so they can connect with you for your campaign, or if I see on Twitter you've been doing like coffee, grab a coffee stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
So come out and meet me. Usually every Saturday I'll try to go out and go somewhere and sit and come out, talk to me about public safety or what's on your mind, and those have been going well.
Doing that this Saturday?
I am not doing it this Saturday, but you'll follow me on my Twitter, Jai for Sheriff, or Facebook, same thing, or my website, Jai for Sheriff.
You always post where you're at?
I will, yeah.
Okay,
yep.
okay.
So, yeah, come on out.
I will. I don't drink coffee. Give me some hot chocolate or something.
Hey, man, thanks for being. I know, again, you actually listen to the show. You're actually a fan of what
I appreciate
we do.
that so much.
We appreciate you coming on, and I think being able to have this type of conversation, you're always the guy that will tell it to me straight, like when me and you ever talk. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah.
And if you've enjoyed this show, maybe the last couple of episodes are a little bit too fiery for you. I would ask that you guys go visit our Patreon. Now, this show really is about being able to have interesting conversations from all political ideologies. So please hit our Patreon link, patreon.com/BRBD. There are different membership levels in which if you contribute, you get to actually pay for this show. And it legit, 100% of it goes towards the production of the show. None of it goes into Jamar or I's pocketbook. But if you can consider doing that because you like what it is that we do, even when Jamar gets on your nerves or even when I get on your nerves,
Never.
Please do that. Also, make sure to hit out our Linktree, linktr.linktr/BRBD. And the reason why is you get connected with our TikTok. Now, maybe you want to argue with me on TikTok, argue with me on Twitter, argue with me on Instagram. That's how you're going to be able to connect with us. So please hit the Linktree and be able to connect with all of our socials.
You're good at that. Every time I think of the mere ideal of those two beating their respective opponents, I think of this.
Man, Jenga's gonna kill that boy.
And before I go, Rachel did ask if you can donate to the show without participating in the Patreon.
Huh?
Rachel's asking if she can actually contribute to the show without participating in the Patreon.
Hell yeah.
Hit me up either on one of my socials or through the page. Send us a message.
Wait.
We'll get a way to figure it out to actually go directly to the studio.
You stepped on that. Don't be John. Don't be John. Let me try this again. Every time the mere idea of those guys beating Ilhan or Tim Walsh, I think of this.
Yeah, especially
Man, Jenga's gonna kill that boy.
I'm Jamar.
Tim Walsh, and I'm AK Kamara.
See you guys next week.